Okay. Um, let's see. That looks like it's up. Let's change the title. Okay. Let's throw in the VS Code link. And we're good. Alright. That's fine by me. Let's get started. So, what we're going to do is we're going to look at VS Code right here. Now, this is the IDE that I'm going to be using. So, it's made by Microsoft. If you've never coded before, IDE is an integrated developer environment. Basically, what you're going to do is this is going to be like the word processor for any documents they're writing. This is the same thing, but for code. So this is going to help process, show any errors, and not run, but format your code properly. So it will run your code if you're using like C++ or Python or something, but we're just doing HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, so that all runs in the web browser. So either like Chrome, Firefox, Safari, that's what's going to be what's actually running your code. Once you have this downloaded, so go over if you have Windows, if you have Linux, if you have Mac, just pick whichever install version you need. Once you have that, we can jump into it. So I'm just going to go ahead and, not there, let me find, I have like 1,000 folders, it's awful. We're going to find the folder we want, and in this folder we're going to let's call it Incremental Game YouTube. There we go. So we take the folder that we made. You can put it on your desktop. You can put it wherever you're going to actually find your folders. You can put it right here. You're going to grab it, and then you can throw it down to Visual Studio Code, and here it is. So here is the actual page up. Let me make sure my big fat head isn't in the way. Um, Looks like we're good. All right, so over here on the left, what you're going to be able to see is the title of the actual folder. So here I have like Incremental Game YouTube. You should have whatever you named it, should be right here. So over here on the left, you're going to have a couple options. You can either highlight over New File, or you can just come right under this, right click it, New File, and then index.html, dot's very important, is going to be the first file that we actually have and we're going to use. So we have our index.html. Click enter. There you go. We got our page up. So once you have this, we can actually start to write the HTML. However, this is very important. You can name it whatever you want, .html. It can be named game.html, main.html, app.html, whatever. It just needs that .html, so then the actual like IDE, so that VS Code knows that we're using HTML. This is the same thing for like the browser. The browser needs to know that you're using HTML. Without that, it won't know what language you're writing, and it doesn't know how to like process and read that. So to start off, what you can do is you can just type an exclamation mark, click that, and then you have the actual page up. So right here you have like the boilerplate, basically. You have what they call the HTML boilerplate. And that has all the basics that we need to actually get our project started. Now, the meta tags we're not really going to worry about. I'm just going to take them out for right now, and then we can come back to them later, but I'll leave it pretty bare bones. So, actually, I'll just leave them there, but we'll ignore them. Starting with doc type. Doc type is just specifying what type of document we're actually using. We're using an HTML document. Um, Next, we have our HTML tag. HTML tag is what wraps the entire page. Basically, any HTML we write, whether it's like the words, whether it's the tags, whatever it is, it has to be between these two HTML tags. The head has all the meta section, it has the links, it has the title, which is the tab title. We'll see that in a second. And then the body is any content that you have. So videos, pictures, any text, any buttons, anything like that, all goes in the body. So that's the basic setup here. Then we're going to add two more things. We're going to style.css and we're going to add a script.js. So this is the same thing. The only thing that matters between these is that you have the extension correct. You can name them whatever you want. These are pretty typical. Script can often be called main.js instead if you want to do that, or app.js or game.js, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. I would leave style as style.css just from the fact that the style is going to be kind of like a common term throughout people that are coding CSS. So it helps you a little bit for when you're using some of the shortcuts in VS Code that you use style.css because it auto uses that as the name. So you have to go back and change it if you don't put style, and this way it's kind of already done for you, so you run into less errors. What we can go ahead and look at now, though, is linking everything together. So how do we get our page to communicate between the HTML, the CSS, and the JavaScript? Because they're three different programming languages. So the easiest way to do that is basically right under, or anywhere in the head, it doesn't matter. It can be right under the head tag, it can be right under the title tag, it can be right under or above the title tag, doesn't matter. You just type style.css, or no, sorry. You type link :CSS, hit tab, and there you go. So this is our basic reference to the CSS file. So there's some important things here. First, you have rel, which is the relationship to the HTML document. Basically, what this is asking is, how is this CSS file related to the HTML file? So it's like, how are these two similar at all? Well, the similarity between them is that it's the style sheet. So the CSS is the style sheet for the HTML. What that means is it's all the pretty styling, colors, pictures, formatting, anything like that, anything that looks nice. That's what the style sheet is. And then the href is just the actual link. So it's asking like, where is this linked? Like, where is it? And in our file hierarchy, it's in style.css. All right, so there's some basic stuff about tags I'm going to go over in a second, but I'm going to link the JavaScript too, and then we'll go back to tags. So, in between the body tags, and when I say in between the tags, I mean in between the opening and closing tag. So the opening tag is the word with just the two brackets, and then the closing tag is the word, the brackets, and the /. So that's the opening and closing is anything between that is what you're manipulating in some way. So it kind of works like a sandwich. Like you have two pieces of bread, and then you have like cheese and ham, and anything else in it is what you have inside your sandwich, but that's all part of the sandwich. So anything outside of the bread isn't part of the sandwich, essentially. For the body, I'm going to put the JavaScript on the bottom. And we'll go back to why I do that. Some people will put in the top. There's different reasons to do it either way. But for now, we're just going to do script src. This is the same thing. So the source is going to be your link to the JavaScript. Just like your href was your link to the CSS, this is going to be your link to the JavaScript. So in the source, we just put game.js, and there you go. That's linked correctly. So now we want to test out to make sure it's actually linked, and maybe we want to look at our page. So we should add like two things. First, let's just type words, make sure that shows up. While I'm at it, I'm going to change the title to incremental game, and then we'll kind of go from there. So I have an extension that I use. It's called Live Server. If you go over here to the four squares and type in live, not liver, live server, you can find live server by Ritwick Day right here. So this is going to be an extension that basically prevents you from having to like reset the browser every single time that you save the page. And this way you'll kind of be able to go through and just type it in, save it, and then you can see what you changed on the actual page. Alrighty, so from there, let's actually open it up. So once you install that, you can just right-click the index.html, click open, and then here we have our page right here. So you can see the words that we have, and then you can also see incremental game on the tab. So that's the title. That's what the title is doing, is the title changes this tab up here. Alright, now give me 1 second. Alright, so that handles that. Okay, so to continue here, basically what we're going to do is we're going to check out to make sure the JavaScript is connected in some way. So we do console.log, and then we can do, let's say, test. Nope. Jesus. Okay, there we go. What you're going to do is you're going to go to your web page. So make sure that you save your VS Code, because that's going to be a big thing. If these aren't saved, then it won't actually show up on the web page. So just go File, Save, Save All, whatever. And what we're going to do is we're going to right click the page. So I would recommend you use Google Chrome just because that's what I'm using. It's easier to follow along. I like the Chrome DevTools a lot. If you really like Firefox, you like using those tools already, just use them. You probably already know how to do most of this stuff though. So regardless, click Inspect, go over to the console, and we see Test. So that means, hey, our page is connected correctly, so that the JavaScript is connected to the HTML. So let's see if the HTML is connected to the CSS. Easy way to do that, use an asterisk. Asterisk grabs the entire page, and then you're going to use two brackets. So the two brackets essentially are just like going to be the container again, like your sandwich. It's going to be the container of your CSS code. Background color white. So first one is your like what you're changing, and the second one is how you're changing it. So your method and property. Um, so like we're going to change the background color. How are we changing it? We're changing it to white. Great. That doesn't make any sense why I did that because that wouldn't show up. Okay, let's do black. There you go. So that's connected too. We know everything's good. If yours doesn't work for any capacity, just go back, make sure the script tag's in the right spot, make sure it's typed correctly, make sure the name is the same as the name over here on the left, and the same exact thing for the CSS. Make sure it's in the right spot, typed correctly, same name. Then if all those things fail, just do it again, and you'll probably find the issue, even if you didn't like see it. You'll be able to identify what the problem was. Alrighty. Let's look at what we got here. I'm just checking on the Reddit post to see if we got anything that anyone wanted to see. Let's see here. Alrighty, so sorry about that. Let's go back to this. Um, right now we have a couple things that we're just gonna like punch through. So we want to change our actual like format of what we have on here, and we want to get rid of this color black because it looks awful. Um, get rid of the test, and we'll just kind of like start off with some basics. So if I just want to make something really simple, like cookie clicker-esque, like you just click on the button and then it increments up, this is how we do it. Name H1. H1 is going to be your header. As you know, and as you've seen before, we have an opening and a closing tag, right? So we have our H1's opening, then the H1's closing. Anything in between that is going to be what we're changing to an H1. What is an H1? An H1 is a heading tag. Basically, it goes from H1 to H6. H1's the biggest, H6 is the smallest, and those are the heading disparities. So let's just say, let's use cookies just because it's easy. Um, we won't actually make the game based off of that, but that's the simple thing. So there we have cookies. Below that, we're going to need a button. So there's our button. We should probably put some text in it. That'll be helpful. Okay, there's our button. That's the HTML. Pretty much all you need. Uh, we're going to have to put in links. So ID equals two quotes. Whatever's in the ID is going to be like your reference. So this is how you're referencing the HTML element. It's like, how do I reference that to my JavaScript? Because they need links to each other. Like, we linked the JavaScript and the HTML together, but the individual elements need links too. So I follow a format of this. I do the cookie heading, and then for my ID, I do cookie btn for button. So we have those two, and those are our links. So that's how we're going to reference them. We go back over then to our JavaScript to get this to actually work. So, couple simple setup things. Use comments so that you know what you wrote. Because if you don't use comments, you're going to completely forget about it. You're going to look at it like the next day or the next week or whenever you come back to it to keep coding, and you're going to have literally no idea what you changed or what does what. You'll be like scrambling all over trying to figure it out all over again. That's a catastrophe. You don't want to deal with that basically. Um, so what you're going to do under this DOM variable is you're going to do const, or you can use let optionally, but I would recommend using const to begin. Const is a constant, essentially. Um, it's a JavaScript constant. That means like a constant is something you can't change, and then a let is a variable you can change. And we'll go into variables in a second too. But for now, that's the basics, just write const. So you've const, and then you have, let's name it something. So we want cookie heading, right? Const cookie heading equals, so cookie heading is the name of the variable. Const is the JavaScript identifier to say this is a constant variable. Equals, so once you declare it, so this left side is declaring, you're going to assign it to something. So you're going to give it a value. So we have equals document dot, we'll use query selector, and I'm going to go through all this, so don't worry about it. Use query selector, and then right here we're going to use cookie heading, right? So over here from left to right, I'm going to use an easier example first, and then we'll explain this complex example. But let's say we have let. So let and const are similar. Let is the one you can change, remember. Const is the one you can't change. Const stands for constant. That's how you remember it. So let is a variable. Let's say we have let apples equal 2. So we have 2 apples. So let is the JavaScript keyword. That's saying let us make a variable. Apples is the name of the variable, and how many or what that variable is equal to is the 2. Now you still might not be following this, so there's one more analogy that's really helpful. Think of a variable like a box, like you have a box in front of you. That box, if you open it up, has something in it. It has 2 apples, like the number 2. So we look at the box, that's let. Let is the box. Apples is what's written on the outside of the box. That's like what's physically written outside. We open it up, the 2 is what's in it. So that's what's known as an integer. Any number is an integer variable. If we want to use like words in any capacity, so that's called a string. A string is a word. If we want to use words, then what we do is we would do something like words. I know, extremely creative. Um, we'd use, I don't know, I opened that, sorry. We use words. Then we have apples written on the outside of our box. Remember, let is our box, apples on the outside, open it up, you have words in it. That's it. That's the entire analogy for variables. So this extremely complex version that's up here, um, we have our constant, so it's something that doesn't change. We have cookie heading, which is the name. And then on the right side, that's what's inside of our box. So this is just a reference. All this is this is the reference to the HTML. So we're going to break this down further. Document. What's the document? Document's the HTML document. That's it. So you go, hey, go over to the HTML document, and then you got your query selector. So query selector is a fancy way of saying grab something, select it with the query. This would be your query that you're looking for. So you get cookie heading, and then you need a hashtag here. The hashtag is for the ID. So since it's an ID, you use a hashtag. And then you just use the name. That's it. So that's your query selector. That's what you're selecting. So you come over here and you say, hey, we're going to select the H1 cookie heading, and that's how we're getting it with this long line of code. So that's it broken down as best as we can. Beyond this, we're going to want to actually start making the game work behind the scenes, not just have a bunch of references. So that's all we have right now is like everything is plugged in and ready to go. We're going to do another comment, call this game variables. And this game variables comment is basically going to be any like numbers we have to manage in the background, any variables we're managing, anything like that. So for this example, let's have cookies. So cookies is going to change because the number's going up. Select cookies equals 0 because that's a good place to start at. And you put semicolons at the end of all of your lines. It's just good practice. It closes the line, and then the editor and the actual compiler is going to know, hey, this line's done. Don't keep going because it's cut off. That's what the semicolons are for. So one more thing with cookie heading is it's a naming convention. So we see that I use like a capital H in the middle of it. This is called camel case. This is what we use for any object-oriented programming. So how that works with camel case is every first word is all lowercase, and every subsequent word, so every following word, the first letter is capitalized. So camel case, chocolate bar, anything like that. Food is here, so that's how you write it out. Regardless, let's continue on with this. So we have our let, we have our const. It's very basic. What we're going to do essentially is they're connected, so we need one more thing. We need to connect the button. We need to connect this clicker button. And how we do that is the same way as before. So you can just copy that top line and just change some things around. So we have cookie button this time. Oh, nice to see Philip. See you later. Yeah, it will be on my YouTube channel. I'm just gonna, whenever it's done recording, I believe it just stays up. And if not, I'll just like make sure to post it. So then we have cookie button, and then we have document.query selector. So then we go to cookie heading, and instead of heading, we're going to do button because that is what we're referencing right here. And remember, since it's an ID, we're going to need a hashtag. So that's kind of like the important thing you need to keep note of. So now that that stuff's done, let's actually make it work. We need a thing called an event listener to actually get this to function properly. So for this to function, you need to have someone, or something rather, sitting on the button waiting for something to happen. So that's what we call an event listener. Thanks, Philip, by the way. Basically, that event listener acts like a little person that sits on the button. Think of like a Hobbit or something sitting on a button. And whenever somebody clicks on it or does some event, like some new games are using hover, where like you hover the mouse over the button and it increments up or something. Whenever whatever event you specify is happening, that event listener is going to yell, hey, the event's happening, run this function. That's basically an event listener in its simplest form. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna uh, basically come in here and build the event listener. So cookie button dot add event listener. So we're gonna grab that cookie button reference right here and remember what it references. So it's actually talking about this cookie button in the HTML. So it's talking about this button right here, the one I'm clicking on. That's what we're referencing in the JavaScript. So we got cookie button dot add event listener. You come in here and you put two parentheses around it, and then in those parentheses we do the actual action. So we're doing click, and then we're going to do the function. So this is called an arrow function, a little more advanced, but if you start doing it this way, like as to start off, you'll have a pretty good idea of like how these things work. Um, so you won't really have to worry too much. Um, so let's just start with this. We're gonna have our cookie increment up. So let's start there. So we're gonna do cookie plus equal 1, or cookies rather. We got to make sure spelling's right. I'm awful at that, honestly. A lot of times there's some spelling issues, and that's how our games get bugs. That's how we end up with bugs all over. Um, for now, though, it's cookies. That's fine. We're going to leave it like that. Um, so we have the cookies increment up. So every time they click it, we're gaining 1 cookie. So each click, they're going up once. We've built the basic mechanic. The thing is, though, if I come over here, we don't see anything. Doesn't work. It is working. It's clicking up. It's just not updating to the screen. So how do we update it? Well, we got to grab our cookie heading right here with the h1. Now we already did that, right? We already have a reference. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to type cookie heading dot inner HTML. So inner HTML is going to go into the HTML. You can also use inner text if you'd like. Inner text goes in between the HTML tags. Inner HTML just grabs the entire line. It doesn't really matter which one you use, just that you're a little more limited with inner text because inner text will only grab the text while inner HTML will change the HTML. Um, I just usually leave them as inner HTML because if I want to change it later, I like to have the option. So you do equals, and then you're going to use backticks. So backticks are weird because nobody knows what they are and nobody knows where the key is. So it's the tilde key. Nobody knows where the tilde key is either. Top left of your keyboard, there's a little squiggly key. If you don't do shift, so don't click shift and just click that key, you'll get backticks. If you click shift and click it, you get the tilde. Otherwise, you get a couple of backticks, and that's kind of where you stand. So these backticks are going to allow us to insert variables as well as put in text, basically. So we put in the variable, we're going to put in the variable called cookies, and then we're going to write the actual word. So I'll break this down for you in a second here. So we got cookies, right? And then, so this cookies is going to be the actual text that shows up on the page. So it's going to be like, this is the words that we see on our page. This cookies, the second one, with the hashtag and the 2 brackets, that's going to be the cookies, the number. So that's going to be this one here. So I can change this a bit so we can make it a little easier. This is going to be cookie num, and this one we have to change to cookie num, and then this one we're change to cookie num. So this is the actual number that's going up, right? That's what this is. This one on the left is the actual string. So that's the word that we see. So let's check it out. Let's see if I broke it. No, it works. Fantastic. It worked the first time. It never happens. Um, so we click our clicker and it's going up. It's incrementing up, and it's updating now on the page. That's good. Everything's perfect. We're in like the right spot that we want to be. This is the most simple mechanic to get this thing to function. This mechanic also sucks. Nobody wants to sit here and do this all day. It's miserable. Nobody wants to do this. So a lot of games are pushing towards a more like idle environment, right? Where you're clicking things that are managing and you're buying upgrades that are managing all that clicking for you. So you're not sitting there and doing anything. A lot of games even were at the point where they threw out the clicker mechanic. It sucks, they hate it, they don't want to use it. So we're doing something better now. I'm more on tune with that. I also like introducing some interesting mechanics, I guess you can say. Some of these interesting mechanics could be like I like there's a game that I've been working on a bit, which I'll show you some functionality of that, where it's like the Linux command line, so like you're hacking more or less, and you type in commands, you click enter, and that's what buys you the upgrades, and that's what gets your like all your management and your numbers to go up. We'll kind of just go through a bunch of different mechanics. We'll look at a bunch of different types of games. I'll show you some art assets I have that I bought like years ago, and we'll go through kind of like implementing some of those. So basic art, I'll show you some ASCII art that we can do maybe, and basic formatting and UI. So that's what we're gonna do beyond this. I'm just gonna walk you through like my process as we go, but we should probably like decide on the game that we're gonna make to unify everything. So I might take a second and do that. I'm between the two because the hacking one's pretty niche. Like I don't really see a lot of games in the market like that, so I don't know how helpful that'll be as like a tutorial. Um, I might just show like a bit of the functionality of like how that works, like in taking taking keyword input. Sorry, my headphones went out. Um, but if we take like keyword input or we take any like incremental number input, that's what we'll go over. Um, all right, so let's just go through. I'm going to show you some of the art that I have for a second. So here's some of the stuff that I have that I was thinking we might use. Just some basic, nice like PNGs. Um, we could do something survival based. I made a couple games where it's like you have to sell survival goods in some capacity. Or I also have a lot of so like gun art here. So here you go. So we have a lot of this. So we could do something with weapons. I've done like roguelike combined with clicker games, so on and so forth, but we'll kind of just like see where it takes us. Um, let's start with some simple like game loop mechanics. So we have a clicker basically, um, and now we want to do something like we want this to loop, and we don't want to deal with this anymore, right? We don't want to click. So how do we make that better? Well, the first thing to make that better is to build that function, like the game loop functionality out in the JavaScript. So the easiest way to do that is going to be, we come down here, we type game loop, and then I'll show you how to make the game loop. So you're going to type window dot set interval. I don't know, I totally forgot that for a second. Window dot set interval, and then there's two things in here. So we need the function, which is basically like what I'm typing. It looks like gibberish. Is this? So it's two parentheses, an equal sign, an arrow, and two brackets. That's like a very basic function. This function doesn't have a name, so it's not going to be called anywhere else, and it's only going to be used right here, like in this spot. So that's the same thing with the add event listener, is it's a function that's only being used in one location. Um, and so we have this, and we click enter, and then there's one more parameter that this takes. So on the side here, you put a comma and a number. So I'm going to put 1,000. This 1,000 is going to be how many ticks we have basically. This is going to be like your game tick. 1,000 is 1 second. It's registered in milliseconds, so it's like the tick rate of the game that we're making. If we want to do half a second, you want it to tick faster, you do 500. Tick slower, you do 2000. That's 2 seconds. It's double the tick rate. Regardless, we still have our loop here. So nothing happens now because like we didn't change anything. Um, what we could do, just really basically, so I can show you this, is we'll do two things. We'll actually just copy what we have in this event listener and throw it into the set interval. So you just copy it over, put it in, and as you can see, we're incrementing up now per second. Every second we're getting one more cookie. Now, we didn't add a mechanic. Well, we did. We added like auto clicking basically, but we didn't add anything that buys the auto clicker. So we got to do that next. That's like the next step. So let's get rid of this. This is useless. And we're going to do some maintenance. We want to add a function. So we're going to add our own function now. The way we do that is I'm going to comment out a section called functions. And we're going to use const. So these are new functions. Old functions, you'd write the keyword function and you'd type your function out. This is ES6, so this is like the new JavaScript. For these functions, you write it like a variable basically. So you say const, and then we do a function name. So let's do auto cookie. I know, extremely interesting stuff we got here. So we'll do auto cookie equals, and then what are we gonna do? So I say this is how you section it out first, so you can actually see it. That's how you write the whole function. So same deal as before. You do the two parentheses, and then you do the exclamation mark and the arrow, and then the two brackets. And that's like the function, the syntax for how you write it. Syntax, if you don't know what that means, is like the grammar. So that's like the proper way to write it, the grammatically correct way. In here, what we want to do is have the number go up every second. So we're just gonna leave that there. It's not gonna work right now. We're gonna leave it there and come back to it. We need to add another function. So I'm just gonna copy it over, move it down, and we're gonna call this one update UI. So this is gonna, as you could have guessed, update the UI. What we're gonna do is we're gonna grab this line right here, the cookie heading dot inner HTML, that whole thing. We're gonna snag that and move it. So I'm going to cut it out of the event listener. I'm going to throw it in the update UI function. So I'm going to write a little comment for myself. Updates game UI per second. So what the game UI is it's going to update the headers. So like if we go to the index, it's going to update my H1 every second, and that's it right now. The only H1 we have, so that's the only thing that's going to update. But we can come down here and we can throw our update UI function inside of these two brackets. Okay? And that's going to run this every second. Just like it was ticking up that number every second, like cookies was going up one by one by one. This is going to do the same exact thing, except this time it's going to update the UI every second. So here's the difference. Just because it's updating the UI, it's updating the UI with this number, whatever cookie num is at the moment. So right now, it's not going to increment up on its own. What it will do is if I click it, it'll every second update. So that's going to take a minute, right? That's going to be a little slow because if I'm clicking really fast, we're getting real slow updates. So to remedy this, what you can do is just call the update UI function inside of your event listener. Now this can get a little bogged down, right? Because we only want to update one thing, and then if we're calling the update UI function, it's super long, there's a bunch of stuff. You can run into some performance issues here. However, the performance issues are so small at this scale, and they're so small through most scales that you're doing, you're usually not updating enough stuff on your screen to have any like actual performance issues with JavaScript. This isn't really a problem. The main performance issues you're going to run into like a game like this is just going to be number incrementing because the JavaScript console gets really pissy about really high numbers. So that's the only time you're going to have to worry about that. Aside from that, not really a problem. Um, we'll just keep it to this. So now we want to get our auto clicker to work. So we got to add some stuff back to the HTML. I'm going to copy our good old clicker button and call it auto clicker. Now, I'm going to get sick of this cookie thing real soon, so I'm going to teach you a little bit about like rapid prototyping and trying out like a new game idea as we go. Um, but regardless, we have our cookie button. We're going to change this to auto button. I know, my incredible naming convention. And you can see on screen they're next to each other now. Fantastic. And this one, so we fixed that issue before, so now it's every time we click, it's immediately updating. So it's right there. All right, so we got to get our auto clicker to work. So we need to link. It's the first thing we do. So we're linking our HTML button to our JavaScript. Anybody remember how to do that? Since we don't have anybody here, I guess I'll tell you. We do auto dot or dash btn. Remember, you need your hashtag. The hashtag is for the ID. And we're just going to change this to auto button. Keep the camel case because that's our naming convention. And that's it, pretty much. We have to call it now, or we have to like make sure that it works. So what we'll do is we'll throw in auto button dot add event listener because auto button needs an event listener too. So really we could just copy this. There you go. Now we don't want it to do the same thing as the clicker button, right? We don't want it to just like increment up. We want it to do it for us. So what this is going to do is that there's like 50 different ways to do this, honestly, to detect if they've clicked it. So I'm trying to think of like what's the best way I want to show you this. First, we probably want a cost. So say cookie num minus equal 5. And we want to display that to the user. Even though this is like a terrible way to display it, we'll just do it like this for a second so we can see like, hey, auto clicker 5 cookies. That's the cost. So it'll decrease their cookies by 5 that they actively have, and then it'll start the incrementing. So maybe we make a new variable. We call this cookie increment. Make it equal to 0. So then we do cookie increment plus equals 1. And then all we do is this auto cookie function. Instead of plus equal the number, like the 1, what it's going to plus equal is the increment. And I don't think I actually talked about this. Plus equal, what that's doing is it's cookie num equals cookie num plus whatever the cookie increment is. So that's basically saying like it's the number we already have, the cookie num, let's say it's 5, plus whatever the increment is. So it's going to be 5 plus 1. That's all plus equals is doing. It's just a shorter way to write that. It's more efficient, looks a little nicer. It's quicker than typing this whole thing out. Regardless, we have our button. So now to finish this off, we come down to our Windows set interval function, and we call our auto cookie function. So we type in auto cookie, and we're done. So all this does is like these calls, they're just running these functions. They're just going in. So like whenever this is run every second, it's saying, okay, run auto cookie. So the code comes back up. It says cookie num plus cookie increment, and then that's done. So then it comes back to update UI, and then it says, okay, update the UI, and it runs that every single second. That's all it's doing. So let's see how broken this is. All right, so we have 5. Boom, we're good. So it decreased, and now it's ticking up per second. Now this will stack right now, so it'll just go down, and we're running into an issue again. If I'm clicking this, it's taking a second to update. We don't like that. So we're going to go ahead and call our update UI function inside of the event listener. If we do this for all of them, it might even be useless to have this update UI in it, but I kind of use it as like a catch in case something happens like outside of this code that I have, like if we add extra code and something happens along the lines of like the cookies updates and then it's not updating because we don't have an update call, it'll guaranteed catch it so that like every second it'll at least update whatever event happened that increased your cookies or decreased them. So now when I click the 5, it immediately goes down. Have a problem though. We're going into cookie debt. And that's not good. We don't want debt. We don't want them to be able to buy it if they don't have enough, right? So how do we prevent that basically? The big way to prevent that is you do an if statement. So this is a little logic. This is where we have like programming logic comes up. So you do cookies, or we check if the cookie num is greater than or equal to 5. And if it's at least 5, then we can buy and we can go through our action. So let me grab this, and that will be the increase. So this is going to say, like, if this is true, so if we have more than 5 cookies, like say we have 7 cookies, so wouldn't it be more efficient to have a second interval function at something like 20 or 10 milliseconds? Yeah, you're right, yes. It would be more efficient. I just didn't do it because I didn't want to like confuse people, but you're correct. It would be more efficient to do that. We can go back and I can show you like I can add that in a second. That's a good point, Arnold. Thank you. Um, Shoot, what was I talking about? Okay, so if this is true, then we come back through and we say, all right, our cookie num decreases by 5 and our cookie increment plus equals 1. So we go back, we have our 5, we do that, we're back to 0, it's incrementing up by 1. You can't buy it anymore if like the subtraction won't work out. So if it's 4, you can't you can't use 5 because you don't have that. So that's essentially all that does. It just gatekeeps people from them not being able to buy stuff. Um, and now we will talk efficiency, which Arnold is actually like way more correct about this than I am, because when you're building like really big code structures, this efficiency does matter. I'm just lazy, so I apologize about that. But yeah, we can do a separate window.setInterval function, or you can just do a separate interval function, like completely separate from the window. Um, but regardless, let's see if we throw this together real quick. If we just copy the whole thing, actually, you can do window.setInterval, and then we can do the update UI, and then 20 milliseconds, let's say, and then that's it. So then we can take away our update UIs that we had before, and we don't have to bog up our code, which is another issue. That's another reason why he makes a good point, and we should only put it in this one spot. Get rid of it here, because it's not repetitive, and you won't like throw your code everywhere. Um, there you go. So now you can see it's updating immediately. You can't even see the difference. Um, so there you go. Then it's stacking, so it's upgrading. It's updating by whatever amount of number like upgrades we bought. So we can't see that right now. Um, and that is that. So that's basically auto clickers in a nutshell. Pretty basic. We might want to see a ticker, right? We want to see how many auto clickers do we actually have, right? Let's add that real quick. So we'll say auto clickers, and we're going to deal with the same thing. So we're going to have auto heading, and we're going to need to copy it again. We need a new reference every time. This gets really repetitive. Like every time you got to do this, you have to build a new reference. So auto heading equals document.querySelector. Everything's good. We just type auto heading in, and there we go. So now we need to reference it somewhere, right? We add it to our update UI function. The way we would do that is we have this cookie increment. I guess we can change this word to just auto clickers. And now we need to find everywhere we put it and change it. So auto clickers. Make sure you name your variables something that you like know what they are, because I also run into this issue a bit, where sometimes I name them like bogged down garbage, and then I can't. I have no idea what like what variable does what. So that's something you want to watch out for a bit. Um, so we have our auto clickers. Everything's good. Now we need to add it to our update UI function. So we'll do auto heading dot inner HTML equals slash slash auto clickers. Same thing as before. Remember, this is the word. This is going to be your variable name. So auto clickers. Fantastic. And that should now show up. So when we click, nothing happens. We buy one, that pops up. So there you go. Now you can see how many auto clickers you have, and you're starting to get somewhere. There's a lot more features I want to show off, a lot more stuff I want to go through. So we're just going to go through like the most optimal way to do that. I'm probably going to restart at this point and just punch through this really fast and like make a game that's interesting in some degree other than just like a really basic like boring um, clicker game. And then you can kind of see rapid prototyping, which is important. Rapid prototyping is really important because it helps you refine the skills that you've done before, and then it helps you add something new. So maybe you have a new mechanic you want to work on. So you can practice your old skills plus adding a new mechanic, and you kind of push on from there. I will be back in 2 seconds. I gotta go grab something real quick. So let me. I have something somewhere that says I'll be right back. There you go. Here, you can look at this pretty art. It's full screen, so you can't see it now. Can you not see this? Oh, you can, I think. Wait. No, you can see full screen. Alright, we're good. I'll be back in a second. Hello. Let me make sure that I can hear myself. Alright, seems we're all good. So I'm just gonna make a new folder real quick and let's punch through this. So where are we? Right here. We got all this stuff together. Let's ignore that we ever did any of that. And let's look at our art one more time. I'm really going back and forth between these two, like the hacking game and the like some kind of gun running thing. Mm. We also have there's one more. So there's like a survival variant that I guess we could do with this. Let's try that. Let's do that. I think that'll be the most intriguing, I guess. So we'll use this artwork as our inspiration, and perhaps we can pair this with the armor one, and you can build like kits and stuff. Maybe we can pair all three together. I don't know. Let's see. Um, I need to find the folder where I keep the jumbled mess of all the games that I have. Here we are. All right. Let's say survival YouTube incremental. All right. So we're gonna throw this down on here. Let's close the last one. Let's close this, and let's get going. Off to the races. So I'll just kind of like highlight everything we did before, and we'll get through this one a lot faster. If you need me to stop at any point, just comment in the chat or whatever. You can always join the Discord. I'll link to that. Um, and then you can ask questions there as well. So basically when I'm rapid prototyping, I just throw down my boilerplate. I get down my style.css, and I get down my script.js like before, or game.js, whatever we want to call it. And then I'm just like moving pretty quick here. I don't really test them out. I run into this issue like down the line where maybe I code for like 20 minutes and then I finally look at it and then I'm like, nothing's working. And it's just because I didn't link the HTML correctly or the CSS correctly or whatever. Um, so there we go. There's our page. Let me make sure nobody had anything in the Reddit that they wanted to see. Um, Not really. Alright. So let's get this game going. So what should be like the base mechanic? Let's look at the let's open the art again. So what do we got here? We could scavenge, perhaps. They could collect things or gather materials of some sort. So we could have a hunger meter. This is going to be a terrible game. I just want to preface, but it'll go through the mechanics you need to make a sound game. Um, this is the hardest thing. Is figuring this out. Like, what do we want to make? That's the hacking one, actually. I think that would be the most interesting. Sorry about that. Um, just because it is unique in some capacity. There we go. So, just threw that out. Um, let's grab this, throw this on here, and we're off to the races. So, vinegar. I don't think that's not the one I meant to open. Did I don't, oh, I think I threw this in here by accident. I don't even, whoops. Alright, here we are. Yeah, I mean, maybe we could look through the piled garbage of games that I've made in the past one day. Anyway, let's get our index.html going. Here we are. So, we have our HTML, our style.css, and we have our game.js. Alright, so from here, let's do hacker game. Let's go to the body. We're going to kind of break everything down piece by piece. So, first thing we're going to do is we're going to add an h1, call this, whoops, I don't know. What should our points be? Hacking, or we'll do IQ to start. That can be like a general thing that you gain, and then that can be like the big ticket number, and then we'll do maybe scripts. So like the more scripts you have, the faster you go, or something like that. Yeah, that's fine. And so we're gonna need a form. Okay, so we got to section everything off, right? So when we're making this, we want to use divs, div, and we want to use a form. We can get rid of the action because we're not actually submitting it. So we'll have this div be um, stats, and then we'll have the second div be form. We'll do stats section. We'll do form section. That way, we'll be able to kind of like keep going in like a positive manner. All right. So we have our form. We're gonna have an input. which is going to be text. So why don't I see the, oh, wrong page. Let's open this up. Throw it down over here. There we go. Perfect. Looks terrible. So we're going to want to make this look like a hacking terminal eventually, but for now, you know, we'll live with it. That's basically it for what we're going to do to start off. We need to ID some stuff, make sure this works. So ID the form as, or we don't have to ID the form. We can give the input an ID of input text or user input or something. Anything works really. All right, so now we need to get our DOM variables. And let's get started. So we want to ID our IQ and our scripts. IQ heading, yeah, that's it. And then we'll do the scripts. Headphones keep turning off. So we'll do the scripts and let's say scripts heading. All right, that's all connected. Well, it's not connected yet. We got to do const IQ heading equals document dot query selector. Remember, we're trying to grab the actual select the queries. Then we're gonna do IQ heading. Just scripts heading. And then we're going to take everything, not from buttons, but we're going to take it from user input. So this could be really weird. We want to grab the form. And form doesn't need a hashtag. The reason for that is because form is going to be a tag name instead of an ID name. That's the main difference. Alrighty. So after we go through this, let's see what we got here. I actually only have like 2 more minutes, so I will probably wrap it up here, and then I will continue on this either later today or tomorrow. So I will see you later.